Hello everyone. My name is Linda and I want to tell you a story that happened to my friend Nancy. I named this story as, I gave my apartment to my parents. 6 months later, my sister, who stole my fiancé, posted, "Many thanks to my parents for giving me this apartment. Finally have my own place with my fiancé." So I showed them who the real owner. Well, let's go. So I guess I should start from the beginning. My name's Nancy, I'm 32, and honestly I never thought my family would screw me over this bad. But here we are. I grew up with my parents and my younger sister Harper. We were never super close as kids, but I figured that was normal sibling stuff. Harper always seemed jealous of everything I had, my friends, my grades, even my clothes. She'd throw these little fits when I got attention, but my parents would just say, "That's how little sisters are." After college, I got a decent job in marketing and worked my ass off to buy my own place. It wasn't huge, just a 2-bedroom apartment, but it was mine. The mortgage was killing me, but I was proud as hell of that little apartment. It was in a good part of town, close to everything, and way better than the cramped places I'd been renting. My parents were still struggling financially. They'd been renting this tiny studio on the outskirts of the city for years. It was honestly depressing, barely any natural light, paper-thin walls, and the neighborhood was sketchy as hell. Every time I visited them there, I felt terrible seeing how they lived. Things started getting weird when I started dating Jake. He was this really sweet guy I met through work, funny, smart, had his shit together. We'd been together for about 8 months when I started noticing Harper acting strange around him. She'd show up wherever we were hanging out, always dressed to the nines, laughing way too loud at his jokes. Harper would find excuses to text him directly about family stuff or ask him for help with random things. She started showing up at his work during lunch, claiming she just happened to be in the area. When I confronted her about it, she'd act all innocent. "What? I can't be nice to your boyfriend? God, Nancy, you're so paranoid." But I wasn't paranoid. I could see exactly what she was doing. Harper had always wanted what I had, and now she wanted Jake. The worst part was that Jake seemed flattered by all the attention. He'd brush off my concerns, saying Harper was just being friendly and that I was overreacting. I wanted to believe him, but deep down I knew better. Harper was working some angle, and Jake was too nice or too naive to see it. The whole thing came to a head on a random Tuesday. I was at work when I got a text from Harper that made my blood run cold. "Hey sis, just wanted to let you know that Jake and I are together now. Please don't try to interfere with our happiness." I stared at my phone for like 5 minutes, reading that message over and over. I called Jake immediately, but he didn't pick up. Then another text came through, this time from him, "It's true, and I'm really with your sister now." I sat in my office bathroom and cried for an hour. Not just because Jake had dumped me, though that hurt like hell, but because my own sister had betrayed me. She'd deliberately gone after the one person she knew I cared about, and she'd won. When I finally pulled myself together enough to function, I started hearing the real story from mutual friends. Apparently Harper had been stalking Jake for months. She'd figured out his schedule, his favorite places to grab coffee, where he went to the gym. She'd show up coincidentally everywhere he went. The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't even function in that city anymore. Every street corner reminded me of Jake, every restaurant we'd been to together, every stupid coffee shop where Harper had probably cornered him. I needed to get as far away as possible. Luckily, my company had been trying to get me to transfer to their office in another state for months. The pay was better, the position was a promotion, and suddenly it sounded like exactly what I needed. I called my boss that same day and told him I'd take the transfer. Within 2 weeks, I'd packed up my entire life and moved halfway across the country. I found a small apartment to rent while I figured out my next steps, and honestly, it felt amazing to be somewhere clean and new where nobody knew my story. My parents were shocked when I told them I was leaving. "But honey, what about Jake? Can't you two work this out?" Mom asked. "Mom, Harper stole my boyfriend. There's nothing to work out." Dad was more supportive. "I don't approve of what Harper did, Nancy, that wasn't right." At least someone in my family had some sense. Mom kept trying to play peacekeeper, but Dad seemed to understand that Harper had crossed a line you don't come back from. The new city was incredible. Better weather, more opportunities, and nobody knew about my family drama. I threw myself into work and started making new friends. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. But I still had that apartment back home with the mortgage hanging over my head. At first, I thought about selling it and buying something in my new city. The market was good, and I could probably break even or make a small profit. Then I thought about my parents, still stuck in that awful studio apartment. They'd been nothing but supportive during the whole Harper situation, and they were getting older. Maybe I could help them out and solve my apartment problem at the same time. So I called them up with a proposal. "Look, I'm planning to stay here long term. Why don't you guys move into my apartment? You can have the whole place to yourselves, and you'll finally be out of that tiny studio." Mom started crying. "Nancy, honey, we couldn't possibly. It's perfect for everyone. You'll be close to your jobs and in a decent neighborhood. I'll keep paying the mortgage and property taxes, and you just cover the utilities. Think of it as helping each other out." They agreed immediately, and honestly, it felt good to do something nice for them. They'd always struggled financially, and this was my chance to help them live somewhere decent for the first time in years. Within a month, they'd moved into my apartment, and I felt like I'd made the right decision. My plan was simple: pay off the mortgage as fast as possible while building up savings, then eventually buy a place in my new city. Everyone wins. 6 months passed in my new city, and I was finally starting to feel like myself again. Work was going great, I'd made some solid friends, and best of all, I barely thought about Harper and Jake anymore. Out of sight, out of mind. I was scrolling through social media one evening, just mindlessly checking updates, when I saw that my cousin Lisa had liked one of Harper's photos. I hadn't looked at Harper's page since I moved. Honestly, I'd forgotten I was still following her. But curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on the notification. What I saw made my stomach drop. It was a photo of Harper in what was clearly my apartment, my kitchen, with my granite countertops and the backsplash I'd picked out myself. She was posing with some fancy coffee setup, looking all domestic and happy. But the caption is what really got me: "Many thanks to my parents for giving me this apartment. Finally have my own place with my amazing fiancé. Housewarming party coming soon, can't wait to celebrate with everyone." I read it 3 times before it really sank in. What the hell did she mean her parents gave her my apartment? My hands were shaking as I scrolled through more of her recent posts. There were tons of photos of her and Jake in my apartment, acting like they owned the place. Pictures of them cooking in my kitchen, watching TV on my couch, even sleeping in what used to be my bedroom. Then I found the posts that made me sick to my stomach. Photos of Harper, Jake, and my parents all hanging out together like one big happy family. There was Dad grilling in the backyard of my apartment building while Harper and Jake laughed in the background. Another photo showed all 4 of them at some restaurant, with the caption "Family dinner with my wonderful parents." One picture really got to me. It was from what looked like a weekend trip to the mountains. Harper had captioned it, "So grateful my parents promised to support me in any situation. Family is everything." I kept scrolling, looking for any sign that my parents were actually living in my apartment too. But every photo showed Harper and Jake there alone, or with my parents visiting like guests. In one photo, I could even see Harper's clothes hanging in my closet. Then I went to Mom's Facebook page, and that's when I found the real kicker. She'd posted a photo of herself and Dad in what was clearly another rental, some tiny, run-down place that looked even worse than their old studio. The post was from just 2 weeks ago. So let me get this straight. I'd given my parents a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment to help them out of their housing situation, and instead of living there themselves, they'd moved Harper and her new fiancé in and gone back to living in a shithole? I was shaking with anger, but I needed to be smart about this. I kept digging through Harper's posts, and that's when I saw it, a comment from my cousin Lisa asking about the housewarming party. Harper had replied, "This Saturday at 7. Can't wait to show everyone our new place." I looked at the calendar. This Saturday was in 4 days. I had plenty of vacation time saved up, and suddenly I had the perfect plan. I called my boss the next morning and said I need to take a week off for a family emergency. Then I booked the most expensive last-minute flight I'd ever bought in my life. But you know what? It was worth every penny. I also grabbed all my important documents, the deed to the apartment, mortgage papers, everything that proved I owned that place. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. Not my parents, not Harper, nobody. I wanted this to be a complete surprise. The flight felt like it took forever. I kept imagining Harper's face when I showed up at her little housewarming party. She thought she'd won, thought she'd gotten away with stealing my boyfriend and now my apartment too. But she was about to learn that actions have consequences. I landed Friday evening and got a hotel room near my old neighborhood. I spent the night going through all my paperwork, making sure I had everything I needed to prove that the apartment was mine. I also looked up tenant rights and eviction procedures, just in case things got ugly. Saturday evening, I put on my best outfit, not because I wanted to look good for the party, but because I wanted to look like the successful, put-together woman I'd become. Then I called an Uber to my own apartment. The ride over, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Part of me was nervous about the confrontation, but mostly I was just angry. These people had taken advantage of my kindness and generosity, and they were about to find out that was a mistake. When I got to my building, I could hear music and voices coming from my apartment. There were cars parked all over the street. Harper had really gone all out for this housewarming party in my home. I took a deep breath, walked up to the door of my own apartment, and knocked. After a minute, the door opened, and there was Harper, looking absolutely stunning in some designer dress I'd never seen before. For a second, she just stared at me like she was seeing a ghost. Then her face went white, and she whispered, "What the hell are you doing here?" "Hello to you too, sis, nice party you're throwing in my apartment." I could hear the music stop inside, and suddenly there were voices asking who was at the door. Harper tried to close it, but I put my foot in the doorway. "We need to talk, Harper. You weren't invited to this party, Nancy, you need to leave right now." I pushed past Harper into my own apartment, and the scene that greeted me was surreal. There had to be at least 20 people there, relatives I hadn't seen in years, some of Harper's friends, and even a few people I didn't recognize at all. They were all standing around with drinks, admiring what Harper was calling her new place. The apartment looked completely different. They'd repainted the walls, moved furniture around, and hung up pictures of Harper and Jake everywhere. It was like they'd tried to erase any trace that I'd ever lived there. "Nancy," Mom's voice cut through the sudden silence. She was standing by the kitchen with Dad, both of them looking like deer in headlights. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here because this is my apartment, and apparently nobody bothered to tell me my sister was throwing a housewarming party in it." Harper stepped forward, trying to regain control of the situation. "You weren't invited, Nancy, this is my party in my apartment, and I want you to leave right now." That got a reaction from some of the relatives. I could see confused looks and whispered conversations starting around the room. Good. Let them wonder what was going on. "Your apartment?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Harper, this has never been your apartment. This is my apartment, with my name on the deed and my name on the mortgage that I pay every month." "Nancy, please," Mom rushed over, looking panicked, "you're making a scene. Just listen to Harper and leave, okay? We gave this apartment to her and Jake." "We gave?" I stared at my mother. "Mom, you didn't give anyone anything. This isn't your apartment to give. I let you and Dad live here as a favor, not as owners." "But honey, you said we could have it," Dad chimed in, though he looked less confident than Mom. "You gave us the keys and everything." "I gave you the keys so you could live here, not so you could hand it over to Harper. There's a huge difference between letting someone live somewhere and giving them property worth hundreds of thousands of dollars." By now, all the party guests were openly staring. Some of them were starting to look uncomfortable, and I noticed a few people quietly gathering their coats. Harper's face was getting red. "Nancy, you're ruining my party. Mom and Dad decided to give me this apartment because you abandoned it anyway. You don't even live in this state anymore." "I didn't abandon anything. I moved for work and let our parents live here out of kindness. And now I find out they've moved you and your fiancé in instead?" I looked around the room. "Yeah, that's right, everyone. Harper is engaged to my ex-boyfriend, the one she stole from me 6 months ago." More uncomfortable shuffling from the guests. A couple of my aunts were giving Harper some serious side-eye now. "Nancy, stop it," Mom said, her voice getting shrill. "We made a decision as a family. You have a good job, you can afford another place. Harper needed somewhere to live with Jake." A decision as a family? When exactly was I included in this family decision about my own property? "We tried calling you," Dad started. "Bullshit," I cut him off. "When? Show me one text, one voicemail, one email where you asked me if Harper could live in my apartment." The room went quiet. Mom and Dad looked at each other, and I could see they knew they were caught. "We have your messages," Mom said desperately. "You told us we could have this place. You said it was ours now." "Really? Show everyone these messages. Show them where I used the word give or yours or anything like that." Mom fumbled with her phone, clearly stalling. "You can't show them because they don't exist," I continued. "What you have are messages where I said you could live here. Living somewhere and owning it are completely different things." Jake had been standing in the corner this whole time, looking like he wanted to disappear. I decided it was time to address him directly. "And you, Jake, are you seriously okay with this? You're living in your ex-girlfriend's apartment? That's not weird to you at all?" He opened his mouth but nothing came out. Harper jumped in to defend him. "Jake has every right to be here, this is our home now." "No, Harper, it's not, and you know what the really sick part is? I was actually trying to help Mom and Dad. I thought they were living here, getting out of that awful studio they were stuck in. But instead, they gave my generosity to you and moved into an even worse place." I pulled out my phone and showed everyone the Facebook photos I'd found. "Look, this is where Mom and Dad are actually living. Some tiny dump that's worse than where they started. They gave up a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment to hand it over to Harper, and for what?" Some of the relatives were starting to mutter among themselves. Mom's face was bright red now. We decided Harper needed it more." "Needed my apartment more?" I laughed bitterly. "She needed my apartment that I pay for more than the people I was actually trying to help." "We're taking you to court," Dad suddenly announced, like he'd been building up courage. "You promised us this apartment, and we're going to make you follow through." "Go ahead," I said, pulling out my folder of documents. "Because I have every piece of paperwork that proves this apartment is mine. Deed, mortgage, insurance, tax records, all in my name." "What do you have?" "Some text messages where I said you could live here." More people were leaving now. I could see Harper's party falling apart in real time, and honestly, it felt amazing. Harper was practically vibrating with anger now. "This is my party, Nancy, you're not welcome here." "It's my apartment, Harper, I've never been more welcome anywhere in my life." I looked around at what was left of the party, maybe 8 people who were too awkward to leave but clearly wanted to. "You know what, everyone? Party's over, thanks for coming to celebrate Harper living in stolen property, but I think it's time to call it a night." And with that, the last of the guests grabbed their things and headed for the door, mumbling awkward goodbyes and avoiding eye contact with everyone. Once the last guest left, it was just me, Harper, Jake, and my parents standing in my apartment. The silence was deafening. Harper was the first to speak, and she was furious. "Look what you did, you ruined everything." "I ruined everything?" "Harper, you've been living in my apartment without permission. You threw a housewarming party for property you don't own." "I didn't ruin anything, I just told the truth." "We're not leaving," she said, crossing her arms. "This is our home now, and you can't make us go." I smiled at her. Actually, I can, and I will. The next morning, I met with my old friend Tom. He worked as a lawyer and handled similar cases. I explained the whole situation over coffee, and he just shook his head. Nancy, this is actually pretty straightforward legally. They're essentially squatters at this point. I can draw up eviction notices today. How long do I have to give them? 30 days is standard. I'll make it official and send everything via email so there's a paper trail. Within hours, Tom had sent formal eviction notices to Harper, Jake, and just to be safe, my parents too. 30 days to vacate my property. I flew back to my new city that afternoon, feeling better than I had in months. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I was in control of my own life again. Over the next few weeks, my phone was constantly buzzing with calls and texts from my family. At first, they tried the guilt trip approach. Nancy, please, we just want to talk, Mom texted. This is tearing our family apart. We raised you better than this, Dad wrote. How can you be so cruel to your own parents? But I ignored all of it. They'd had 6 months to include me in decisions about my own property, and they'd chosen not to. Now they could deal with the consequences. Then Tom called me with an update. So I heard from another lawyer today. Your parents hired someone to sue you for breach of promise or some nonsense. Are you worried? Not even a little bit. I met with their lawyer and your parents yesterday. They're claiming you promised to give them the apartment and that they've made improvements so they deserve to keep it. Tom told me the meeting had been a disaster for them. Their lawyer couldn't produce any evidence that I'd promised to give them the apartment, and when Tom pointed out that I'd been paying the mortgage and taxes this whole time, their case fell apart. Your mom had a complete meltdown, Tom said. Started crying and saying you were ungrateful and that they deserved the apartment because they're getting older and don't have anywhere else to go. What did you tell them? I told them that being old doesn't entitle you to steal your daughter's property. Then your mom begged me to ask if you'd at least let them live there without Harper and Jake. And? I told them you'd already made your decision. Everyone out in 30 days, no exceptions. I felt a little bad about my parents. They'd been manipulated by Harper too, in a way. But they'd made their choice when they decided to side with her over me. They could have called me, asked me what I thought, included me in the decision. Instead, they'd handed my apartment over to the person who'd betrayed me most. A month later, Tom called with the news I'd been waiting for. They're out. Harper and Jake finished moving their stuff this morning. Your parents helped them load the truck. Did you see them leave? I was there personally to make sure they actually left. Harper was crying and cursing your name the whole time. Very dramatic. I decided I wanted to see the apartment one more time before making my final decision about what to do with it. I flew back out that weekend and met Tom at the building. The apartment was empty but trashed. They'd left holes in the walls where they'd hung pictures, stains on the carpet, and they'd even taken some of the light fixtures I'd installed. Classy, Tom said, surveying the damage, really showing their maturity here. But standing in that empty apartment, I realized something important. I didn't want this place anymore. It was tainted now by everything that had happened. Every room reminded me of their betrayal. Tom, I want to sell it. I'm never moving back here, and I don't want to be a long-distance landlord. I want to be done with this whole chapter of my life. We put it on the market the following week, and it sold within a month. The profit was enough for a solid down payment on a beautiful condo in my new city, a place that was truly mine, with no family drama attached. I heard through relatives that my parents ended up back in another tiny rental, and Harper and Jake found some cramped apartment across town. Apparently, they're all still bitter about the whole thing and love telling anyone who'll listen how cruel and selfish I am. My cousin Lisa called me a few months ago with an update. Nancy, I just want you to know that Harper's been posting on Facebook about how you ruined her dreams of homeownership and calling you a traitor. And what do you think about that? I think she's delusional. You helped your parents out of kindness, and they screwed you over. Anyone with half a brain can see that. It's been over a year now since I sold the apartment, and I've never regretted it for a second. I love my new condo, I love my job, and I love my life without family drama. Some people have asked if I miss having a relationship with my parents and Harper, but honestly, I don't. They showed me who they really are when they thought I wasn't looking. Harper will always be jealous and manipulative. My parents will always choose the path of least resistance, even if it means screwing over their other daughter. Those aren't the kind of people I need in my life. I built a new family here, friends who actually respect me, colleagues who value my work, and eventually, I'm sure I'll find someone who won't be swayed by my hypothetical sister's dramatics. Sometimes I wonder if Harper and Jake are still together. Part of me thinks their whole relationship was just about winning some game against me, and now that the game's over, maybe they don't have much left. But that's not my problem anymore.